Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Logic Reasoning session. This is sponsored by Paradigm Law, and today we will look at course of action. Logical reasoning is a subject that is not typically taught in school. It's problem solving is something that you learn through doing puzzles and doing trick questions and so on. So, but a lot of exams, including law entrance exams in India, use logical reasoning because, after all, it's an aptitude test. So you will see a lot of aptitude exams like the IBPS, the bank PO, net management exams and so on. They all use this because it helps one know your analytical reasoning, your reasoning powers, be it analytical or critical reasoning, and all this comes under logical reasoning. You can contact us by subscribing and liking our channel. You can call or WhatsApp on this number and visit our website. Please subscribe to the channel so you will be able to receive a lot more videos and we will feel encouraged to create more. Thank you. Course of action is a topic that comes up in logical reasoning, be it in CLAT or any other law entrance exams like the Symbiosis or the All India tests. It's also featured in a lot of the banking exams as well as the short service commission exams. So we have seen that this topic definitely comes in all these exams for at least 3 to 5 marks. So you can keep that as a rough benchmark when you're preparing. Once you master this topic, that's as good as having 3 to 5 marks in your kitty, right? So what is course of action? Basically, a very broad definition of course of action is that it's an administrative step, which also means it's a collective step. For example, if you were to see here, just give me a second. Yeah. So here we have course of action as a guideline or administrative step, which is initiated to improve or solve the problem based on the information provided in the question. So very simply saying, say we have a problem, right, which is given in the form of a statement. And then you're given two options and you have to choose which will be the right course of action. Now here it's very important to uh, understand that we are not looking for an individual's decision making capability, but an administrative step. So a lot of students who write these exams are never exposed to a corporate working style or even a regular company. You know, they don't understand how decisions are made, right? How you decide on something on an individual basis and a collective basis are two different things. So as an organization, if you have to take a decision, that becomes a collective decision and therefore your individual bias doesn't come in, right? So that's why course of action is always mostly at administrative step. So your questions are going to be uh, framed by, for example, say the admission board of a college, or it'll be framed using a principal in a school, or like an employer who has to take up a new decision, or for example like the railway board, like we'll look at a similar example in this session. So as an administrative step, it's it has to be for the collective good, right? Now there are some rules that are used to arrive at the solution. Before that, let's further understand what uh, else is part of the definition of course of action. Now, these decisions that you take up, it may not completely solve the problem. Maybe 80% of the problem is solved. But even then, that is good enough, right? You're looking at an improvement to this problem. The solution can be a partial solution, right? As long as the problem is mitigated, it is reduced from the current level, that is fine. For example, you have a flood situation. You have to send relief for the flood victims, right? So you will be given two different courses of action to take. So what you choose is very important in terms of, is it immediate, is it effective, is it improving their situation, the victim situation. All those things come into play, right? Now, like the definition says, it's generally asked to test the decision making skills of the student or the examinee sitting for this exam, which is quite true. Okay, so let's look at the rules that are used to solve course of action problems, right? Like we had already talked about this, you have to have an unbiased and neutral mind frame. So what that means is, you don't bring your personal bias, you don't get swayed by the given statement, or change your mind based on different courses of action that's got to be followed, right? And importantly, don't judge the course of action that has to be taken, because at an administrative level you have certain limitations. You don't have the freedom that as an individual you would usually have. Secondly, to identify the root cause of the problem is very important, because then you will be able to find the proper solution. And of course, we don't look at an extreme solution. Whatever solution you come up with must comply with the given scenario. For example, if, like the flood situation, right? If there is, if I mean, if you can send in relief through airborne helicopters or things like that, then if that is feasible, only then you use that. Or if the local army is able to provide the relief, then you use that. So your solution has to be logical. It has to reduce or minimize the given problem. So that's what rule 3 and 4 talk about. Rule number 5, again, it has to be logically possible, right? And from previous experience, this solution should be a functional one. It should be a positive one, and which helps in solving the problem. So let's look at what a typical question looks like in course of action. You have a statement followed by two courses of action, and you're given about, usually it's only 4, so it can be A, B, C and E, or C and D. So it'll be one of the 4, right? You were never given 5 options in any of these exams. It's one of the 4. So what this means is, you choose option A only if one course of action, that's the first course of action, follows. 2, if only 2 follows. Now, if either follows, now this is very important, you would choose this only if either 1 or 2 would mitigate the problem. It would solve the problem. And you would use this option if both together are necessary to solve the problem. Okay. And D option, of course, neither courses of action will give you the proper solution. Okay, so let's look at the first question. Now, like we saw the typical question in course of action, we are given the statement and 2 courses of action, right? So we have one statement here, which is followed by 2 courses of action. Now, the statement is, the Indian electronic component industry venturing into the West European markets faces tough competition from the Japanese. So the crux of the problem is that it's this industry, right, is venturing into the Western European markets, and it's going to face tough competition from the Japanese. Now, it's very well known that the Japanese are uh, pioneers as well as the experts when it comes to electronic goods, right? So according to the statement, now that India is venturing into Western European markets, what's the best course of action to tackle this tough competition? That is your question. So you have two courses of action. Let's look at the first one. India should search for other international markets for its products, right? Now, if we were to consider this course of action, then is it not possible that in other international markets, the Japanese have already established? Maybe they already have a supply chain in place. Maybe they are already part of that market, right? So does it solve your problem? No. Look at the second course of action. India should improve the quality of the electronic components to compete with the Japanese in capturing these markets. Now, this is a feasible solution. Why? Because if you provide a good quality product at a reasonable pricing, right, of the electronic components, whatever the market rates are, now this will help you compete with the established leaders in the market. So option 2 is our answer. In this, we have looked at B if only 2 follows. And that is your answer. Only 2 follows. Okay, so let's look at the second question we have here. This statement says on an average about 20 people are run over by trains and die every day while crossing the railway tracks through the level crossing, right? On the face of it, what we understand is on an average about 20 people are run over by trains and die every day, right, while crossing railway tracks through the level crossing. Now a lot of people wouldn't read through the complete question and they would miss out on what a level crossing is. I have a picture here that will help you understand what a level crossing is. This picture, right? So this is the railway track, the black one with the train here. This is the train, and we have a road. Now, anytime you have a road crossing the path of the railway line, we have something known as level crossing. And this level crossing has to be guarded or gated by the railway employee. So normally you would must have seen that there will be somebody who mans these gates and keeps them closed when the train is expected to pass by, and opens it at other times so that traffic can move on this road. It's a very simple picture, but we just want to highlight what a level crossing is. So this area is known as the level crossing. So we have 2 courses of action. The railway authorities should be instructed to close all level crossing. Yes. Those who are found crossing the tracks when the gates are closed should be fined heavily, which is also an excellent course of action. Why? Because your problem here is that people are dying every day because they are run over by trains, and that's only because they are crossing the railway tracks through the level crossing. So one, you get someone to, so at an administrative level, you make sure that this is done, that you are instructing your employees, you're instructing the guard at the level crossing that he must ensure that the gates are closed. Secondly, those who are found crossing the tracks in spite of the gates being closed, they should be fined, and they must be fined heavily, because if it's a light fine, then probably they tend to do this again. So then to prevent that, you fine them heavily. At an administrative level, yes, this makes total sense. Maybe as an individual, we would say, though, there are people who, in spite of everything, will still take that risk of crossing the railway line, but that is something that is beyond the scope of this question. For now, all we need to consider is at an administrative level, which course of action is most feasible. Now, unless you implement course of action 1, course of action 2 will not work. In the sense, how can you find someone heavily if he's crossing the tracks if this is not ensured? Gates being closed have to be ensured. So this, when your railway authority, they have to be instructed to close the gates. If they are not given that instruction strictly, then they may not close the gate, and therefore you have people dying by crossing the tracks. And then finding anyone at after that point is it's there's no point in finding someone after that. So my point is, in this particular question, both follow. So your option will be like we saw here, if both follow. So it's option E. So E will be your answer. Both courses of action will follow. See, unless one is done, two cannot be implemented. Just take a minute to understand that unless you implement this instruction, the first course of action, that the gates have to be closed, how will you implement the second one, that you're going to find people who have caught crossing the level crossing when the gate is closed, right? Let's look at the next question. Statement: majority of the students in many schools do not pass in the final exam. Now, we have two courses of action. One is that these schools should be closed down as they have been unproductive or they've become unproductive. And the second course of action is teachers of these schools should be immediately retrenched. Retrenched means to be removed from their posts immediately without any benefits. It's not a retirement, it's a sudden move. It's a sudden removal of the person from his employment. Right. So if majority of the students in many schools are not passing the final exam, right, which course of action will actually make the majority of the students pass the exam? That in essence is your question. So if you close down the schools, does it help you? No. If you send these teachers away, will that help you? No. Unless you find good replacement, only then, right? So meanwhile, until you can hire the right people or improve the system of the school, I mean, there is many things that you could do to help these students pass the final exam. But given 1 and 2, will either of them help you? No. So in this case, your answer will be neither will follow. Neither course of action 1 nor 2 will follow. So paradigm law deals with CLAT exams, but we've had lots of inquiries regarding logical reasoning classes and legal classes which we are holding online. And this is a part of that series. If you would like to subscribe and like the video, please feel free to do so. When you subscribe to us, we feel inspired to create more videos, and um, get in touch with us if you have any specific question or if you'd like clarifications. We do organize free demos. Just send us an email and we should help you out with that. For course of action, my input is basically the more number of questions you're able to work on, the easier the topic becomes, right? So try and find as many questions as possible and don't blindly believe the answer key. You must reason it out. Uh, and I hope that I've helped you with understanding this topic in logical reasoning. Thank you. Please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.